Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRACnow.com, on our Facebook page, YouTube, and of course on WRAC Plus, our smart TV app. If you don't have that, be sure to check that out. You can catch this show as well as all the others that have been taking place this week. You see as the headline here, we're about a month away from race day, right? NASCAR, the Cookout 400 returns to Richmond in about a month, and you can kind of start to feel, the excitement around the city and around the sport as well as they look to come to Richmond for the first time in 2025. And I thought, what better person to bring in other than the Richmond Raceway president to talk about things. She's got her fingerprints all over this, lawyer Collier Waran. Thanks so much for stopping by. Race day right around the corner.
Right around the corner. They always say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? I think that's the saying. We have tried our best to stay ready, and we are so excited. The day is finally coming up, August 16th at 7:30. That Saturday night energy is coming back. We're excited.
Yeah, how excited are you to go back to that Saturday night day? I know fans really wanted it. I know there's a lot of excitement about the fact that it's Saturday night, not Sunday night.
Correct. You're exactly right, Nolan. So when I first got the job back in 2022, I think, one of the biggest requests was, why are we not back on Saturday night? That's the very Richmond thing to do. And now that you've been in Richmond for, a little more than a year and a half.
Just a little over a year.
One
of the first things I covered was the race.
I actually remember that. It was exciting to have you down there. And now that you've been here, that there are some very Richmond things that we like to claim here in this region. And Saturday night racing is one of those things. The energy that the fans bring, the tailgating out there is pretty special. I would liken it to SEC football level out there. So I try to only go out there a little bit because I can get sucked in really easily. But it's pretty special. And then you bring the great racing to the region, and we're really excited to bring it back.
How different has this year been, right? You go from, having to, do 2 races every year to all of a sudden now you're only having to do 1. Is it been any slower, or is that naive for me to think?
No, it's a great question. It's one that a lot of people have had. And listen, I'm not going to glaze over that we weren't really disappointed to not have the spring race in Richmond, because it's a very Richmond thing as well. Mm-hmm. But man, we haven't stopped. We went from having about 125 events throughout the year at the Richmond Raceway complex and a series of concerts to having about 150 and adding some really large acts in our concerts. So we're bringing in Teddy Swims in another week. We just finished Megan Maroney, the Avett brothers. So we've had some really great sellout crowds there. We've been able to focus on those types of things. But we definitely understand that our main purpose in this region and in this Commonwealth is to be the best and premier racetrack that this region has. And so we're looking forward to showing up and showing off on August 16th.
For our viewers that maybe aren't that familiar with racing or yourself, I know you're relatively in a newer position. When did you start at Richmond Raceway?
Actually, I'm right around 3 years ago, in July of 2022. In fact, I started about 3 weeks ahead of that race.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, listen, it was a great time. I learned a lot in 3 weeks. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to any future track president coming in, because you certainly need a lot more ramp up to make sure that you are set and ready to go. But the team at Richmond Raceway and NASCAR is really they're fantastic, and they really prepared me. So, going from a media executive into this role was certainly unique, and it was one that I think a lot of people, they scratch their heads about, and I completely understand. But in media, this more than anybody probably, we have to, and I had to, keep my main audience and then go out and help gather and gain new audiences, right? It's the exact same problem that we're solving for in sports right now, which is to retain our fans, those loyal, tried and true folks that have had their RV spot out at Richmond Raceway for 30 plus years, and it's been handed down to them. We have a lot of those. But then also go and introduce the sport to some new folks. And we're actually doing that really well right now. I just saw a statistic this past week that Richmond, for this coming race, has the most first-time fans of any NASCAR track this year, which I just think is a really cool thing. That means that we're piquing some people's interests that maybe wouldn't have necessarily come out in the past. So we are working really hard to get those new fans, but want to also make sure that we keep those loyal fans happy, and you know how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself kind of in this position of, working in NASCAR? I was looking at your bio. You spent some long time at Auto Trader here in Richmond, and then you were a publisher of a weekly magazine as well. And, kind of putting the pieces together, it's surprising that you kind of land in a role with NASCAR in a venue like Richmond Raceway.
Totally. I think you're right. I spent a little bit of time that I cut my teeth in media at Auto Trader, so I clearly can't get away from motorsports in some way, or motors. But then I went and pivoted to Style Weekly, which is just a fantastic digital online, and I believe that they are still publishing a number of magazines each year. I was there for about 15 years, and the company that owns Style Weekly, or used to own Style Weekly, was Landmark Media, who had tons of TV stations, radio, lots of community papers throughout the United States. And so I was able to work in a large corporate setting, even though it was a smaller paper. So I was able to also sort of transition when they were sold to Tribune a few years back to some of the other niche publications throughout the state, Tidewater Review, Williamsburg, Virginia Gazette, those. So I oversaw a team as well there, and then was able to go to Virginia Business Magazine and Media and really grow the audience there. And I think that's kind of the common denominator in each area. We would grow events, we would grow our digital audience, and we would grow our audience, our readership as well. When NASCAR was seeking a new leader in this role, full disclosure, one of my longtime friends, Tim Clark, who's actually from this area, he grew up with him. He is the chief brand officer of NASCAR at this point. He reached out. He said, I know what you have been doing in the region and how you've been growing, the audience and retaining the current. Do you have any interest in coming and talking to me about working at Richmond Raceway? And originally, I thought it was a media position. And I said, I'm really happy where I am. I actually don't think so. But let me know if you need any help. He said, I'm going to be pushy with this. Could you just join me for a super casual dinner with some of the NASCAR executives? And it happened to be the race weekend that they were there in April in 2022. And the folks, I walked in, and NASCAR doesn't do very much that's casual. So it was a really nice dinner, but the people were so laid back. They were so easy to talk with. I loved hearing the vision of the leadership that had just sort of started with NASCAR in their roles, and how they wanted to move the sport and progress the sport. And just being from this region in Richmond, I knew how important the racetrack has been, and we're celebrating 80 years next year. And so it's just, we've got such a legacy, and so being a part of a legacy organization and being able to sort of transition and challenge myself in a new way, I kept saying yes to let's talk, and eventually they flew me down to Daytona, where I had 15 interviews in one day. Didn't really expect that, but at every single point along the way, the people were they were just very down to earth, but they also were incredibly smart and talented. And I knew it was a place that I would want to work and really work hard, both for the region and our Commonwealth, and of course the sport too.
Yeah. Was NASCAR kind of out of left field for you, or did you grow up a big NASCAR fan? Did you continue to follow the sport, or this kind of maybe reignited a fire to follow the sport?
I think all of the above, but maybe mostly the last. I did grow up. My grandfather used to park cars at the racetrack when I was little, and they had a house about a block away, or a couple blocks away from the racetrack. When he would park cars, he'd say, I was 3 or 4 years old, "Come on down, sugar, and let's come help Grandpa park cars." And so I have those memories that were created when I was little, and those are those core memories, that are really kind of cool to think back on. So that was my first exposure. It was really because my grandfather couldn't afford to go to the race, but he could afford to help and then be able to go. So I remember vaguely back in those days how special it was, But then when I met my husband, I was just 19 years old when we first started dating, and he was a huge NASCAR fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, huge Dale Earnhardt fan. So he started taking me to the races, and of course, my first one was in Richmond. I was probably 23 at the time. It was very fun. I'm going to say there are some that I don't recall because I was having such a good time in the tailgate area. I probably shouldn't say that here. Right. But it was just such a sense of community, and then sports is the great uniter. So I think it was really fun to kind of understand that sport. We would go to Darlington. We would go to Dover. He was such a fan, Nolan, that for our wedding, I surprised him with a garter belt for your.
Yeah, of course,
okay. Yeah. The wedding garter was a custom-made checkered flag with a big number 3. It's actually hanging in my office right now, and so my mother, about died because she wanted a very French country wedding, and I gave her, a racetrack wedding.
There you go.
So yeah, and I think that it reignited what I already knew was so fantastic. But yeah, that's kind of how I got entered into the sport.
How much fun has it been kind of, getting so, I mean, that's got to be pretty cool for your husband with him being such a big fan for all of a sudden his wife is now the president of Richmond Raceway?
Completely.
I mean, that's got to be a pretty cool experience for the family.
The family, yeah, they definitely fangirl a lot over the sport. My younger son and my husband in particular are huge fans, and they have been for such a long time. So I think it has been incredibly fun. It certainly helps my cause when I call and say I'm working a lot later than I expected.
Yeah.
They're like, keep going, you're fine, But it's been fun, and NASCAR, of course, is owned by a family. So one of the priorities is you do get to be with your family a lot, and they know that that we're working a lot of weekends and a lot of nights, just like you guys do here, and so it's nice to be able to offer your family some sort of fun on the other side, and then they get to be part of the experience.
What has been maybe your favorite track memory so far as president?
Gosh, that's a great one. So there's probably 2. For the first 10 laps of every race, I have always told my team from the very first race that I was a part of at NASCAR that the first 10 laps I want to be mine. You can get me anytime before the race, anytime during, anytime after, but the first 10 laps, what I do is right after the pre-race ceremonies, you know how we're very ceremonial in NASCAR, the anthem, the flyover, all of that happens. As soon as, all of that wraps up, I cross over the racetrack before the cars line up, and I go up into the stands in general admission, and I sit in an empty spot with one of the fans. And I just randomly pick it, and that way, from that point on, I get to see the green flag drop, feel the energy, feel the excitement, see it from a fan point of view. And sometimes I see things that we need to do better, but I get to be part of that energy, and that is like, it literally gives me goosebumps every single time. So I think that's probably one of the most special things is those first 10 laps. And then secondly, during those pre-race ceremonies, I get to go and welcome the fans in the infield on stage. And every single time I go, I have pulled up a couple of young ladies with me to help me welcome all the Richmond fans. I feel like it's a really cool experience for them to go up on that stage in front of thousands and thousands on a big stage and a microphone, and screens are projecting them. So they get anxious, they get very nervous, but we talk backstage, and I assure them I'm with them the whole time. But then the sense of like accomplishment when they are walking off and they almost can't believe that the crowd is cheering for them. It's just such a cool confidence booster for a young lady, and it's something that they will hopefully ever look back on and think, that was one of the coolest things I did.
Absolutely.
So, I would say those 2 things are really pretty special.
Yeah, one of the coolest things, this past year covering the race was only my second. I had been to Nashville once as a fan when I was living in Alabama, and I was just enamored by how open and available the drivers are to fans and stuff, right? And being able to be in the garage and kind of see the teams doing their final, finishing touches on race day. That's what's blown me away. I don't. Maybe that's everywhere, but at Richmond, it was such a cool experience. Do you have a favorite driver interaction? Maybe pre-president or post-president?
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. It is super unique to our sport, the access to the athletes and the teams. It's still surprising to me that we continue to allow it, but I love that we provide access. One of the things that is challenging for our sport is that those drivers, once they get in the car, you don't get to see them. You don't get to see them emote very easily. It's hard to sort of connect with them. So this, for us, is the time that our fans can connect with our athletes. They get to meet them and greet them up close. And it is a really special thing in Richmond. In particular, we have a really unique infield situation where you can get even more up close and personal. Dennis Bickmeyer and the team back in the day really did a fantastic job. I think it was back in 2018, creating that experience on the infield. And we've really tried to continue that momentum and build upon it. The cool thing about that infield is if you get the tickets to go down there, you can see the red carpet, you get to meet the drivers, you can see them doing inspections, which may or may not be cool to some people, but it's just cool to meet people. And the energy down there is just awesome. You can watch our race from the infield, and that's super cool. And so to get to your second part of the question, as far as meeting a driver, I've met all of them.
Yeah, of
course. They're all unique, just like every sport. I would say Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney are two that are really easy to be around and really great on the fan engagement side. And they'll just do anything. Joey Logano, the champion from last year, is also just one that really connects well with both our team and he's a huge Richmond Raceway fan, by the way, as well. So I think those three in particular are ones that are just they have I would say a lot extra personality to go along with their job.
Absolutely. You talked about fan interaction. I enjoyed just watching the fans interact with each other and how crazy it gets out there race week. You kind of mentioned walking around, where the RVs are and stuff. Do you have any crazy stories or the craziest setup you've seen from one of the tailgate lots?
Nolan, I am definitely going to keep the crazy stories to myself. That's not for public knowledge. No, the fans they're certainly creative. I saw some creativity when we had Tropical Storm Debbie. I don't know if you remember that last summer, was here during the race week. And the fans, they leaned into it. They created some very unique, colorful T-shirts and really threw some really fun parties. There's really cool setups in the RV area. There's a very inspired tiki bar, and then in our Laburnum camping ground, they set up a pool, and
really?
And they're just known to have. They're the pool crew.
Yeah, they just have a.
So there's and it's the same ones coming back, and they just build upon it. There's always a seafood boil somewhere in Lot F,
of course.
And I get asked to go to some of those, and it's I try to close my eyes to some of the things, but no, they're so fun, and I love that that's the spirit of the sport, is just that sense of community.
As someone that has, experience going to races as fans for, you mentioned there's a lot of, first time race goers coming up in a month or so. Could you maybe map out a perfect race day, what they should do, what they should pack, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and actually, I need to put some more thought to this. But I'll tell you another cool notation for our sport is the fact that you can bring your own cooler with your food and beverages into
that's part of NASCAR.
Our stadium. It's mind-blowing. So pack all the things. And I would say for August 16th, you're going to need to get there early this year. Traffic is definitely going to be a lot more challenging, and so we're going to all have to pack our patience because it's going back to the days of old where getting in there is going to take some time. But we're prepared. Henrico Police Department has been incredible in helping us prepare, and VDOT. So I would say pack a lunch, pack lots of hydration because it is August. We know that. And then pack some snacks. But in the old days when I went with my husband, we would pack we would pack steaks for after the race because we knew traffic was going to be a little bit of a nightmare going out. So we'd camp out, or we'd start cooking our steaks on the grill, and it helped the time pass. And then, so I would say be prepared in that way. We have an incredible fan zone. That's very kid-friendly, very family-forward, and it's got a lot of Richmond-centric elements this year that we're getting ready to announce, because when we have fans come to Richmond and they're NASCAR fans and they've been to other tracks, we want to give them something unique here that really shares the soul and the energy and the flavor of the city and the area. So we've done some really cool things in our fan zone to make sure people know that they're in Richmond and what connects us. And then get into the stadium early, see all that pomp and circumstance, and feel the energy of the anthem and the flyover, and feel the energy of that green flag drop. And I'm sure our safety folks would tell me to not say this, but go close to the catch fence a little bit, feel the wind, because there's just nothing like that.
Yeah, the energy just around those cars is crazy. You can feel it up in the grandstands.
Completely, absolutely, and exactly. It is crazy. Those guys are driving 80 to 120 miles an hour around our track at any given point, depending on the time of the race. And I always get asked, are they really athletes? But the fact that they are getting in that car and driving for about 4 hours, coming within an inch or two of other cars going the exact same speed at probably 120 to 140 degrees in that car for that long, there's no more of an athlete than I know of that can sustain that. So get ready for some excitement as well. Coming up, we are the second to last race before the playoff cutoff this year. And the last race of the cutoff is Daytona the week after us. Well, Daytona, as you know, is a wild card. Anything can happen there. Anyone can be the winner. The crashes kind of come out of nowhere and the wrecks come out of nowhere. So Richmond being in this position, it's definitely going to be elbows out, grit that's on that racetrack for the guys fighting to get a playoff spot in Darlington. So it's going to be a really great race on the competition side as well.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to, in your position, provide commentary on this, but I keep up with NASCAR, obviously, and I see the fans just go polar one way the other every single race about this track's the best track, this one's the worst track. I fully expect for Richmond to be a great race because of the scenario you've brought up. And I just foresee all the fans saying, I can't believe we've taken away one of these races.
Right, I know.
And that's going to happen because it's going to be such great racing with how it's set up, and now it's on Saturday, so the crowd should be great.
Totally.
I think it's going to be a situation where everyone's going to be calling for it to go back to two
Well,
races.
listen, if you remember last year in August, the last lap when Austin Dillon crashed Joey Logano into the wall and then turned and crashed Denny Hamlin to cross the finish in less than 100th of a second to win, that made Sports Center top.
It was everywhere.
It was everywhere. And it was definitely controversial, but incredibly exciting. I was telling someone earlier this week that they asked, where were you? Do you remember where you were and what was going on when that happened? I said, I know exactly where I was. I was in Victory Lane Club right outside. We were getting ready to get the trophy presentation because they come, after they come right in. So
here it is right here, what we were just talking about. Takes out Logano
and then
Denny.
Hamlin. And that is the last lap. And look at the fraction of a second to win after that. There's not much that's more exciting in racing than that kind of moment. And
it was wild. Even the press box, which is notoriously not supposed to cheer, but we were like, "Whoa, my goodness!"
And the energy everywhere was just. We were all in such shock of what we had just seen and heard and witnessed. And even as Austin was coming in to be presented the trophy, we were still in earpieces trying to figure out, are we presenting him the trophy? Like, what just happened here? So I think we're going to see, similar energy from our drivers and teams on the racetrack. So it'll be fun.
I think just a couple more questions for you. We've talked a lot about NASCAR, but you've done 150 events over there in just the calendar year. What has been maybe your favorite non-NASCAR event that you guys have hosted?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got this job, my mother said, "Oh, well, that's really cool, sweetie, but can you get me tickets to the Bazaar Bazaar?" So I was like, "Sure, Mom." And the Bazaar Bazaar is a legacy event that's happened at the racetrack, and we have thousands upon thousands of folks that travel from all states to come to that amazing craft show. And the ladies that put it on are just they have such great personalities. They're so easy and fun to work with. And so I think that's a really unique and fun experience because we get to greet so many people again coming from the outside. We've had Comic-Cons and sneaker fests but I think the concerts are also sort of one of the coolest things that we do. We've got a great event space for concerts, and the acts that we're bringing in this year are really cool. And if you go back in time to see the acts that they've brought in the past, they're pretty cool. And so I think that would be my favorite. Those are my favorite times.
So we're about a month out. Where can you kind of maybe push our viewers to go to if they want tickets or more information on things going on at the racetrack?
Yeah, so of course, richmondraceway.com. You can pick out the exact location of your seat. You can pick out the type of experience you want because we don't just have spots in the grandstands. We've got the Torque Club, which is one of our VIP hospitality, conditioned air, great food and great bar.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's really nice. And the energy in there is really fun too. It's a couple hundred people. We have Victory Lane Club, similar experience, only it's on the infield. And then we have suites. So there's a lot of different experiences that a fan can pick from and select from depending on your level of comfort and taste and how much you want to spend. But richmondraceway.com, of course. And then if you want to get somebody on the phone, because I know a lot of our fans do, it's 1-866-455-RACE, and then we can help you through the process. It's super easy these days.
And final question, your favorite snack on game day from concessions or something that you have to bring from home to make sure you have it? I don't know if it's superstitious type of situation.
Ooh, no, I don't usually eat on game day, but everybody else should. One of the new items that we have this year, again, I mentioned earlier that we are really trying to make sure that we highlight some of the region's best. And so we're going to do I need to get this right, a spicy Hanover tomato BLT.
Say it one more time.
A spicy Hanover tomato BLT.
Perfect.
And you can get that. That's going to be unique to the race this year, and just a little flavor from the area.
Perfect. Well, Lori, thanks so much for stopping by the studio. This was a lot of fun. I think I know the whole team is excited to get back out to the racetrack.
It'll be fun to have you guys.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.